Alright, so let's spend a moment trying to set up what this video is and what it's trying to do. I am of a view that Massive are going to do Year 2 content for The Division, and in this video I'm going to give you the reasons why I have come to that conclusion. Now, I am not saying that any of this is factually correct, none of what I'm about to tell you is confirmed, but it is my very strong suspicion based on the evidence that I'm going to talk to you about in this video, so please do take this with a grain of salt. I might be completely wrong, but I do suspect that I am not. So what leads me to think that Massive are considering Year 2 content in The Division as opposed to a straight up sequel, or just abandoning the title altogether and moving on to a different license? Well, let's knock off the third one first. That's ridiculous. Ubisoft have invested a bucket load of money into this license. It was one of the most successful IP launches in history, and while it certainly had a very rocky road ever since its launch, the recent growth ever since patch 1.4 is highly instructive. Player numbers are up significantly and they continue to grow with time. There is a new DLC about to be released. You are about to get into the Christmas period where the game is, generally speaking, heavily discounted across the board, and it now represents an excellent value proposition with people moving into it. Furthermore, it's very clear, and this is a bit of a controversial one, it's very clear that we're not going to get much from Destiny in the next little while. Now, a lot of people have different views on Destiny, but say what you will about it, it's remarkably popular, and many of the people that play Destiny also play The Division and vice versa. The fact that Destiny is going to leave a bit of a vacuum next year while it prepares for its sequel, which is now slated, or rumored I should say, to release in 2018, creates a prime opportunity for Massive to slot in there and give people the kind of co-op PvE/PvP focused experience that they might be wanting. So that's The Division's growth since patch 1.4. That's the space that will be left by Destiny next year. And I think there's also really a great example to be drawn from Rainbow Six Siege, another Ubisoft title. This game was released back in 2015 and absolutely no one cared. It had about 7,000 people playing it on Steam at launch, just Steam, not Uplay, not PS4, not Xbox. Very disappointing launch. Compare that, for example, to The Division, which had like 63,000 people on Steam alone. But since then, Siege has continued to grow. It had certainly a bit of a dip while it had problems with hackers and netcode and bugs and all sorts of stuff. But the developers doubled down and they've made a truly fantastic game now, which now has a huge and very active community following. You know, on Steam alone right now, you can see the average player base is somewhere in the vicinity of 30,000 players. You can compare this to The Division, which on Steam has generally around 7,000 or 8,000 players at its best time. So Siege is doing well, and I think that it proves that if you invest in a game and fix it post-launch and give it lots of content, you can keep it alive if it's a good game that deserves to stay alive. They've recently announced a Year 2 content patch as well, or content cycle I should say. They are doing another full year of content for that game, so it just shows that Ubisoft are committed to this sort of stuff, and I think we can kind of expect the same thing from The Division as well. So that's that. The Division is growing. Destiny's going to leave a bit of a vacuum. Rainbow Six proves that Ubisoft are willing to stick with a license and invest in it beyond its first year, so long as the game is actually good. The fourth thing that leads me to this conclusion is that Massive are actively hiring. If you look at their website, there are a lot of job openings at the moment on Massive HQ over in Sweden, and they really wouldn't be hiring this many people if they weren't going to continue with this. I mean, maybe they're hiring it for a completely new IP, but I very much doubt that they want to throw out all the hard work that they put into this IP. I'm very sure it's going to be for either Year 2 content or for a sequel. So those are all the reasons why I think we can expect Year 2 content for The Division. But if you're not convinced, that's fair enough. I've got one more thing that I want to show you. Massive recently sent out a survey to a very select group of people. I did not get an invitation to this survey. However, if someone on Twitter did, thank you very much to that person for notifying me of that. That was extremely helpful. So big shout out to CosBRT on Twitter for sort of bringing this up to me. I went through and completed this survey, and I think it leaves very little doubt in my mind that Massive are very committed committed to this game and very committed to doing future stuff with it. The reason why I think they're asking questions about the future rather than about the next DLC, which is Last Stand, is that Last Stand is due in like it's like February, March, right? It's coming out early next year. We know that for a fact because Massive have told us that. That means that that game is already designed. They already know what they are doing with that expansion pack, right? So any idea that this survey now relates to Last Stand is wrong. I mean, maybe they'll incorporate a few of the ideas if they can, but you know, design for DLC packs, design for expansions happens months and months and months before it's released, not now in November when they're looking at releasing it, you know, like 2 or 3 months later. So I think this is a survey that explores DLC in year 2 and potentially a sequel. So let's look at some of the questions because I think they sort of paint the picture about what Massive is thinking about for the future. So first of all, as it's sort of you're setting up this survey and you're kind of filling in your basics, who are you, how old are you, blah, blah, blah. They ask how many games you have played recently and they give you a whole list and you sort of tick what you're interested in. I ticked all of them, and the only one that followed up with a follow-up question was one in relation to Destiny. And it said, you know, you said you owned or had owned Destiny. How have you typically played this? Have you played it solo or co-op? Have you played the PvP? And what makes you want to keep playing Destiny if you are playing it? Such as, you know, you're playing with friends, you're trying to build your perfect character, you think it's fun, you've got a loot system that works for you. Now think back to what I said a moment ago where I said that the absence of Destiny in 2017 is a unique opportunity for The Division. Of all the games that they could have asked about as follow-up questions, because I ticked every one of those games, the only game that Massive was interested asking me about was Destiny, and why I wanted to keep playing Destiny, what I like about Destiny. So yeah, it could totally be a coincidence. They could be asking about this because they're interested in what makes Destiny players tick, and they're interested to apply that to a sequel of the game. But as I said before, I really think it's because Massive is interested in filling the sort of 2017 vacuum that Destiny will leave, and they want to tap into what Destiny players love about the Destiny experience. Anyway, tinfoil hat off, let's move on. Next up, and this is where things get really interesting, Massive then asks a number of questions in relation to the story of the game. They first ask how clearly understandable do you think the game story was? They ask, very oddly, you know, were you able to understand the reasons why you were fighting the opponents in the game, like, you know, the cleaners and the Rikers and the like? And they said, given the storyline of the game, I had moral issues with fighting some of the opponents I faced, and things like, you know, strongly agree, disagree, etc. It's a very strangely phrased question, one that I wouldn't really expect in a survey like this, but anyway, there it is. And then they ask this question around, to what extent do you agree with this statement? I believe it is important to understand the reasons for fighting the opponents I faced in the game. Strongly agree, etc., etc. But the weirdest question of all, and this is the one that really sparked my interest, was this question here. From the list of institutions below, in general, please tell us how much confidence you have in each one of them. It lists the military, police, government, church and organized religion, the medical system, ONGs, United Nations television news, newspapers, banks, the justice system, the emergency or disaster relief forces, and the educational system. Now, to me, this looks like Massive is really exploring, you know, how much we care about story, and if they were to do further story development, where might they point that effort? What kind of organization might they want to bring front and center in any kind of future year 2 content or sequel to the game, so they can make it something that is really sort of drawing on our own sort of, you know, mistrust of institutions? I think it's a really fascinating question, and I think it really points to where Massive are going with this. And in particular, I think it's a really important statement in the context of Ubisoft's Chief Creative Officer's recent comments. So, for any of you that don't know, Ubisoft headquarters, obviously, they have a chief creative officer. He recently did an interview with Le Monde newspaper in France, and there he said that in future Ubisoft is going to focus less on narrative-driven games. They're going to focus on creating large open worlds that are really thriving environments that allow players to create anecdotes. They want sort of anecdote factories, was the words that he used. So it's clear here that Ubisoft are steering away from very sort of heavy-handed direct narrative like we might be used to, and they're more interested in something like Watch Dogs, or even The Division, in fact, where you kind of get to decide where you go with the story. You're not really that stuck to it. You can kind of decide the order of missions if you like. You can choose to pick up those little echoes off the ground or not. It's entirely up to you. So, the point I'm making here is that Massive are exploring how important story is to us in the context of their future offerings, and they're looking at, which of the institutions that they may want to look at as they continue to tell that story. At this point, Massive start asking questions about how much we enjoy the endgame activities, stuff like daily missions, roaming the main world, Dark Zone, etc. And then they also ask about, the 1.4 change, the recent update, and they ask, is it too repetitive to find the loot that you want? Can you find the stuff, that you want more easily? And has it become too easy to find the stuff that you want for your character? I have absolutely no idea where they would have got the wording for that question, but it definitely stuck out in my mind for some unknown reason. Now, here's where it gets super interesting. We know that there is a large-scale rebalancing of the Dark Zone coming in future. We know this because Massive have actually told us this. In previous states of the game, they've said that the patch 1.4 update was about rebalancing the PvE and the core mechanics. Dark Zone update will come later on. So this survey gets into a fair amount of detail about what you like and don't like about the Dark Zone. The first is, they just basically ask, how much do you like the Dark Zone on a scale of 1 to 10? They ask a very interesting question. What is the purpose of the Dark Zone? Which I find a really fascinating question because I did a video on specifically this, the idea that so many people carry different ideas of what the Dark Zone is and why they go into it. Some people want to farm, some people want that kind of organized PvP, some people want lone wolf experiences, some people want 4-on-4 team play. So many different mismatch expectations in that space make it a really unpleasant place for many players. I think that's probably why they're asking this question. They ask, what stops you from getting more into the Dark Zone? Stuff like, I don't feel prepared. I don't understand what the Dark Zone is. I don't like the rogue system. I was told not to try it, etc., etc. And then they ask, how much do you like or dislike the following aspects regarding the Dark Zone? Things like the loot, the feeling of stress and tension, the AI encounters with other players, all these sorts of things. So clearly Massive here are looking at the Dark Zone. They're looking at why we play it, what we think about it, what we like and don't like about it. And obviously that is going to influence the future content plan that they have. They do ask a specific question. How likely are you to keep playing The Division? Giving you something like, I'll stop playing or I'll play for a very long time. Then they ask stuff around cosmetics. They say, how interested would you be in being able to customize your character? Like the physical aspects of your character, like hair and beards and stuff. It didn't even say beards, but come on now, we all want more beards. Accessories, being able to change your glasses or your tattoos, or clothes, having a variety of clothes. And then it asks some pretty shitty questions like, would you be interested in purchasing new outfit packs? And it all depends on stuff. If you say that you would be interested in that, it then says, what is the highest price you would be willing to pay for an outfit pack of 4 different outfits? Super lame question. Spoiler alert, please don't go down this path, Massive. This is lame. Follow the example of other developers. Don't do this. This is shitty. So this is the real money shot here. This one here asks, how important for you would it be to find the following additions to the game next? It talks about things like story missions, new game modes, gear sets, types of enemies, a new PvP experience, a larger Dark Zone, and a new environment to explore, e.g. an additional city. Now, obviously, this is a bit of a wish list. We would all like all of this stuff. To bring all of this along in one drop, to me, says sequel, because, the additional city itself, to me, screams of sequel. But we don't know. More to the point, things like a more balanced Dark Zone and a new PvP experience have been things that Massive have specifically flagged for, this year, or this, not this year perhaps, but coming soon. They did say that this rebalancing of the Dark Zone was happening, so that is, I think, something we can specifically look forward to. All of this other stuff has to come through either a DLC or a sequel, if it comes at all. As I said, they may not want to go through with any of these ideas, but I think the fact that they're thinking about them and the fact that they are clearly good ideas that the community want is itself really interesting. So that's it. That is the survey. Those are the most interesting questions within it. And for me personally, as I said, completely sort of, no guarantees, no promises, no real hard evidence. My gut tells me that we can definitely expect more content in this game in year 2, and I do think they are canvassing ideas for a sequel. The fact that the game has grown so well since patch 1.4, the fact that Siege sets such a good example of what happens to a game when you nurture it the way that Siege has, the fact that Destiny is going to leave this huge vacuum, and the fact that Massive is asking specifically about what makes Destiny players tick, and the fact that this survey comes out now and asks so many important questions about the Dark Zone, about story, about DLC, sort of, a new city, about all that stuff. The fact that it comes out now at a time when we know for a fact that the next DLC is very, very soon. It's sort of like January or February or March at the latest. The fact that we know all of these things indicates to me that we can expect more content on the way in year 2, and I think that that is absolutely fantastic. I'm sure many of you will be listening to this thinking, duh, of course they were going to do year 2 content. I've always thought they were going to do year 2 content, but for me, this survey really solidified the fact that we can probably expect stuff, and that is great because we want to see this game continue to grow and thrive. Patch 1.4 was a huge turnaround moment for the game, one of the biggest comebacks in gaming history, truth be told, and I really believe that it's only going to get sort of bigger and better as time progresses. So to know, or to hope that there's more stuff coming soon is very exciting indeed. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. The big item missing off this survey for me was raids. I really, really, really believe that this game needs raids if it is ever going to compete with the behemoth of Destiny, and the format of this game just suits raids so well. It would be fantastic to see them. So I was disappointed it didn't appear on this survey. I'd be really interested to see the kind of stuff that you guys would like to see from year 2 or from a sequel, but at the same time as well, let's have this conversation as a community. Massive are clearly looking for ideas, so let's start that conversation off so that we have the right sort of inputs and we can give them the best possible ideas. Year 1 was definitely rocky. Hopefully year 2 and beyond can be much, much better. Anyway guys, thanks very much for watching. If you liked the video, do give it a thumbs up. For now though, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you very soon. Bye bye.